Mostly beginners go down this long, crazy road of learning to mix the perfect color, and they waste so much energy. It's like in most tutorials you hear about color temperature, they talk about warms and cools, but they don't talk about hot. And hot is so important to understand. Hot is the third color temperature. Values do all the hard work. Color steals the glory, and it is glorious. Look how beautiful this opalescent effect is. And key to it is, because this is the heart and soul of transparent watercolor, is, do you marvel at watercolor paintings that seem to glow from within? Well, in today's tutorial, we're going to paint a glowing goose. So we're going to learn about how to paint white things. We're going to learn about how to paint loosely. We're going to learn how to paint transparently, the gold standard for many watercolor artists. You'll be watching footage I created doing a live video on my free Facebook group. It's part of a challenge I've started to encourage people to paint just 10 minutes a day. The idea is inspired by the book Atomic Habits, which posits that if you take just a few minutes every day to start a new habit, doing that small, good-for-you thing every day for many days, stretching into years, will change your life. And most certainly, if you paint 10 minutes a day for a year, it will change your life. So I am challenging my members and subscribers to paint postcards, just a little a day, starting with me and this goose. And then at the end of the week, they can mail their postcards and not just brighten their lives, but someone else's life. Be sure to join both my Facebook and Patreon for free. Joining my Patreon for free is the same as joining my mailing list, and that way you will get the notification about the next time I go live. You can also join my Facebook free, where I will be doing those free live demonstrations, and you can upload your own paintings to share. And if you ask for advice on how to improve or how to move forward with your painting, we will certainly help you. My community is very supportive. And by the way, what you see here are actually 3 postcards. I've been working on postcards to have some content to share with my members so that we have something to paint for this challenge. So I have the goose here. We're going to be painting the goose today. And then you also see this little yellow sunflower painted in a very loose way. And painting these postcards, I have found, has been an amazing experience because it allows me to be really experimental, because it's just a postcard. So if I mess it up, who cares? And part of the heart of painting loosely is kind of not caring and accepting the mistakes and having an approach to your painting like the Japanese call it wabi-sabi, where you embrace the beauty of mistakes. And you really have to do that when you're painting loose. So it's a really freeing way to paint, because if your painting really sucks, you can just do another one. So the sunflower was really fun. And also the butterfly is a painting that I'm about to release to my paid Patreon members. Also, a little later, I'll give you information about my paid offerings on Patreon. But for now, let's get going on this little postcard-sized loosey-goosey painting that I'm going to paint in a loose style and with a transparent style, which I will talk about all of that. There's going to be a lot of good stuff in this. So let's go ahead and get started. Here we go. All right, so I'm going to post this free line drawing and reference photo on both places, because not everyone wants to join Facebook for my group. I get it. So the line drawing and the reference are on my Facebook group, but if you join my Patreon for free as a free member, you can also access my free posts where I put the line drawing and the reference photo that I took of this goose on my Patreon. So you can join both, or you can just join one. And so for this line drawing, you just put it on the window and then put your paper over it, and then you can trace it, or you can use graphite paper. By the way, here's the farm where my son takes writing lessons, and here is the character that we're going to paint. He was coming towards me, and you could see his body language. He was about to tell me what's up. And then I kind of used my body language to let him know that I wasn't interested in his message. And he's like, oh, well, I was just wanting to eat some grass anyway. No big deal. So he was really a character, as geese tend to be. So that really adds to the fun of this painting. His little attitude. He has a goositude pose, and I just love that. That really inspired me to paint this postcard. You know, you fall in love with something, and for me, that's what really inspires me to paint these little characters. And so here I'm showing you all my tries. See, listen, I've been painting 25 years. I paint things more than once, and I am here to tell you this is how to really learn quickly to move forward in your painting journey. And these postcards are a great way to do it. If you paint a postcard and your little start, like this one here where I painted negatively, it's so ugly. I made some mistakes. I hated it. But if you don't allow yourself to make mistakes, you're not going to move forward in your journey. And so because I painted this little guy about 4 times, I was able to choose the one that I thought was the prettiest to move forward on as a tutorial for you guys. So I highly recommend painting something more than once. That's really how you're going to learn the fastest. I'm going to use this floral palette by Paul Rubens that I was shocked when I tried it. They sent it to me for free and I had my doubts. But oh my gosh, these colors are as good as my professional paints. These paints are obviously made with real pigment, meaning they are archival, museum quality, artist paint. And you can get this whole palette for under $50. You get all these colors for under $50. Normally you would have to spend $10 a tube. You guys know how expensive watercolor paint is. So you get all these colors, and they include the wonderful pigments that is in the famous Andrews turquoise there. That turquoise, they use the same pigment as Andrews turquoise, which is now discontinued, that used to be sold by Cheap Joe's. It's kind of a legendary paint, and that paint is in this palette. Plus my very favorite ultramarine blue and cobalt blue. It is really a great palette. It also has the same pigment as Holbein Opera, which, see this hot pink in this butterfly? That's Holbein Opera, which it is fugitive. That one pigment is not light fast. So if you use it, you do need to spray your painting with Krylon UV protectant or frame it with UV protectant glass. But it's worth it because it's such an amazing color. And this palette also has the colors that I cannot live without, which is ultramarine blue. Can't live without that color. And cobalt lately is the color that is key to my new technique that I've been teaching a lot of, creating opalescent washes, because it granulates out when you combine it with other transparent colors like M-gram naphthol red and pyrrole transparent orange. You'll learn all this in all my newest tutorials because I've talked about it several times. I talk about all my new aha moments, and it just absolutely floors me. After 25 years of painting, I'm still learning so much. But here real quick, I'm showing you how I started painting, and I start by looking at other art that I really admire and getting ideas of how I want to paint my painting. And this painting is by, I'll have to put the name up on the screen because I can't say it. He's a Russian guy, and he paints in this gorgeous minimalist style that I just absolutely adore. And one of the things that I take away from him is all the sparkles of white that he leaves in his painting. And he paints the bare minimum details to really create very beautiful paintings. So I'm going to use some of those ideas in this painting by leaving little sparkles of white in my goose. So that's the hard thing, I think, for beginners to paint white animals. They're confusing. They have shadows, but they're white. So a lot of beginners just say, well, it's a white goose. It should just be white. But white has so many colors in it. And as artists, we can play with that color and make it even more beautiful because it's a painting. We're not creating a photograph. So we can put a lot of colors in our white areas that are in shade, and it's so pretty, y'all. You just wait and see. It's so pretty. So we're gonna paint. I'm showing you my brush, by the way. I'm gonna paint on Arches cold press, 100% cotton watercolor paper. Paper is the most important thing to get a beautiful result. And I already told you about my paint. I'm just showing you my brushes. Any 8 round will work. This is I love these brushes. Princeton Aqua Elite 12 long round is what you're seeing right here. And this is a fully synthetic brush. And because it's a long round, it has more bristles. So it holds more water. Usually synthetic brushes don't hold a lot of water. That's their downfall. But their positive side is they have a really nice tip, better than a sable natural hair brush that tend to flop. And what that means is when it has this nice spring that I'm demonstrating here, it springs back to a nice tip, and then you have better control. So this 12 long round is a really great brush because it's synthetic, so it's cheaper too, and it springs back nicely so you can get really small details, and you can use it to paint large areas too because of that big belly created by it being a long. So by the way, I will put all my links in my supply list at rachelstudio.com/supply list. If it prompts you to become a member, I promise I don't spam my email list. I send y'all fun little watercolor tips and new paintings that I'm working on. And I do share about my paid Patreon options, but I use my email list mostly just to share watercolor tips and my new paintings. And so I don't spam you. If you don't want to buy this palette, you might already be using my palette if you're one of my members or students. And I'm just showing you here the paints that are pretty much the exact same as what is in this amazing Paul Rubens palette. And also the Strathmore postcards are really great. I painted this butterfly here on the postcard paper by Strathmore, and I was really impressed. Even though I don't think it's 100% cotton paper, it's really good. So I will put a link to that in my supply list at rachelstudio.com/supply list. But remember, the most important art supply you can invest in is paper. Arches cold press is the best, and I talk a lot about that in my full length real-time tutorials. So I talk about it in every tutorial that I paint on Arches cold press. I also love Stonehenge hot press. Here what I'm doing is I'm painting water in wherever I want the paint to flow. Wherever you want the paint to flow, get wet. Wherever you want to have white sparkles like you see in my dried goose painting that I'm looking at too as a reference for where I want to put water, wherever you leave the paper bone dry, the paint will not go there. It will stay clean. And to have these little sparkles in your painting really do something beautiful. I don't know what it is. It's like a diamond ring sparkling. Watercolor is famous for its transparency and its ability to glow. Look how the goose on the left that is dry, the dried painting I'm looking at, look how it's glowing. And by the way, I'm mixing up some very tea consistency blue. I talk about tea, milk, and cream consistency in almost every tutorial also. I talk about it a lot in my watercolor clock video that's free. I have a whole playlist about different paint consistencies that you can go watch my paint consistencies playlist. It's all about how much paint to water ratio you use for different effects. For a really glowing effect like what we're going to paint with this goose, I'm going to use tea consistency. What does that mean? It means I'm painting with a lot of water and just a little bit of paint mixed into that water. And that is the secret to having a transparent, glowing watercolor look. I'm learning to paint in these thin, transparent glazes of tea consistency paint, where you paint a layer of thin tea consistency paint, let it dry completely, and then come back and add more details as needed. So what I'm doing here is dropping in the cobalt blue, and then I pick up some of the green in this palette. If you're using my colors that I use, that I talked about in another free video, I'll link below, Daniel Smith Permanent Green Light, I'm dropping that in. So I have my postcard wet where I want the paint to flow, and then I'm just dropping waters in. I'm dropping water in. This is called the charging technique, where you get your paper wet first and then you drop in color. And this, y'all, is the magic amazingness of watercolor. And I have a whole video about this too. This technique will make you fall in love with watercolor. That's the charging technique where you get your paper wet and you drop in colors, really tea consistency colors for this glowing transparent watercolor look. They mix together and they make the most amazing colors all by themselves. It's gorgeous, this opalescent effect. So here I'm going to drop in orange. I'm blotting my heel because when you're painting details, like I want to be able to paint around the sparkles and I'm going to paint the beak. And if I left too much water in my brush, it would blob out and I wouldn't be able to get sharp details. So that's why you want to blot the heel, the base of your paint bristles, not your tip, but your heel, to get out that extra bit of water out of your brush. So you pick up your paint, then you blot your heel, and then you can paint small details. And then because we have a lot of water on our paper, we might have puddles, which is kind of a good thing, because then as you pick up your paper, after you drop in these colors, you pick up your paper and you use gravity to allow the paint to move around, and they mix together in the most gorgeous ways when you use decent watercolor paint. This won't work when you use really cheap chalky paint. You know what I'm talking about, that really cheap paint you can get on Amazon. If you used real pigment paint, like the cobalt blue is key, the granulation is key to this effect. When you use these real pigments and you let the colors mix using gravity, when you pick it up and encourage them to move around on the paper, it is a gorgeous effect. So this is the key to painting white animals, y'all. Like Richard McKinley says, values do all the hard work. Color steals the glory. The colors, the opalescent effect in this goose is going to steal the show. You're going to look at this goose and see all these beautiful rainbow colors and be like, oh my gosh, that's so pretty. Those colors are so pretty. But y'all, it's the values. It's the lights. Values are lights, mediums, and darks. So we're using very watery tea consistency paint for really light colors, but you still really see the color. And then those sparkles of bright white are the lightest value, of course, the white of the paper. And here I'm painting with cobalt blue where the shadow is. Now, the reference is telling me to make this area yellow, but I decided to make it purple. As you'll see in a minute, I'm going to drop in red. And so I'm not obeying my reference about color. I'm obeying it only about value. The underside of the goose is darker because it's in shadow. So I'm painting it darker with cobalt blue. And here I'm dropping in the color I choose, red and blue, to make a beautiful purple. So I'm using a totally different color than what my reference would say. And I illustrated this in a recent tutorial that I did for my Patreon students, where we painted a kitten with a green paint, and that's it. We painted the kitten with just one color to illustrate this point that you can paint something whatever color you want as long as you get the values right. So stop stressing about color mixing, y'all. You don't have to. See, I'm using orange here. If I was using my normal colors, it would be Daniel Smith transparent pyrrole orange, a color I now cannot live without. But this orange is gorgeous too. And I just used the orange in this palette. It's absolutely gorgeous, but you can use any orange you want. Instead of putting orange here, you could put bright blue. Doesn't matter. Other than using the cobalt blue and the transparent colors to get this opalescent effect. But as long as you get your values right, the color doesn't matter. So when you're painting white animals and they have shadows, those are places you can play with color. It's so fun and freeing. You don't have to mix the exact perfect gray or the exact perfect purple or orange or whatever. Just get your values right. That's where beginners should start, is working on getting their values right. Mostly beginners go down this long, crazy road of learning to mix the perfect color, and they waste so much energy. And to get your values right with watercolor, it is all about getting your paint to water ratios correct. So see how I pick up some paint and then I blot my brush if it's coming out too dark. So you can pick up paint, make a mark. If it looks a little too dark, you can blot your brush and then try again, and the paint will look a little lighter. So you see that I'll blot my brush for two different reasons. One, maybe I want to lighten up how my paint looks, or it's coming out of my brush too puddly. So I need to blot my brush for that reason, to prevent it from being too puddly. If it's too puddly and my brush is too wet, I can't get details. So you see me blotting my brush a lot. And there's two reasons I might be blotting my brush. One is to lighten up the paint that I loaded on my brush, or two is to get out some of the water out of my brush to make it less watery. And here I put a little spatter. Spatter adds a nice detail. It breaks up the textures. So you don't want to use too much spatter, but a little bit goes a long way. All right, now I'm picking up some red and I blot my tip. So when I blot my tip, a lot of times that's because I'm lightening the color in my brush. When I blot my heel, it's to get the excess water out. So I'm blotting my brush here a lot to both make my paint more controllable so it's less watery, so I can get these tiny little details. And in a minute, we're going to re-look at this footage. I'm going to talk about hot color temperature. Red is hot color temperature. And just a few little touches of that really adds a lot to your painting. But notice another thing here. I'm painting the legs and I'm letting that paint melt up into the body. So that attaches the leg into the goose in a painterly way. And that's the heart. One of the hearts of loose painting is to let smaller shapes merge into bigger shapes. So they attach to each other and it gives a painterly look. So your leg doesn't look like a cutout not attached to the goose. All right, getting more tea consistency orange, blotting my heel so I have control when I paint this leg. And it's still really watery and blobby because I've got water also on my paper. So I blot a lot. And when you use these natural hair brushes, they hold way more water, so you have to blot a lot more. So when you use a synthetic brush doesn't hold as much water, so you don't need to blot a synthetic brush as much. All right, now you can put down the orange, and then while it's wet, you can drop in other colors. So I like to drop in, while everything's wet, red paint here and there to enliven my color. All right, let's look at this footage again with more of the why of watercolor instead of the how of watercolor. Here we go. Now I'm putting a pop of red in the beak. I'm using another new insight that I recently had, which is there are warm colors. Warm is like the sun, think yellow. Cool colors are like ice, think blue. And in most tutorials you hear about color temperature, they talk about warms and cools, but they don't talk about hot. And hot is so important to understand. Hot is the third color temperature, which is red or hot pink. And tiny little pops of it will add zing to your painting and give it a wow factor it otherwise would not have had. Don't overuse the red. I mean, you can if you're a master, but for the sake of beginners, I would say just use little pops of red like I'm using in the beak and a little bit at the top of his leg. And I'm letting his leg red melt into the wet purple paint of his tummy. That is the heart of loose painting, where you let smaller shapes melt into each other for a painterly look. It's key. But if you are a super beginner, the most important thing for you to focus on is getting your values right. Stop stressing about getting the perfect color. It doesn't matter, y'all. Values do all the hard work. Color steals the glory, and it is glorious. Look how beautiful this opalescent effect is. And key to it is painting with tea consistency paint, starting with the cobalt blue, and then dropping other colors that are more transparent into it. Because cobalt is a heavier paint that is granulating, almost like sand, it is more opaque, but it's still pretty transparent. It's gorgeous. It's just the granulating effect allows these colors to granulate out from each other and create this opalescent, I call them unicorn washes. I do have a whole tutorial on my Patreon with a cat that has opalescent effects in the background. So that tutorial really will go in depth on this opalescent effect you see in this goose. There's a lot to explain, so it's always good to watch different examples of this opalescent effect. I also have it explained in my postcard tutorial that is free on my YouTube channel. So be sure to check that out. Now, just like a cooking show, I'm going to paint on another painting that is at the same stage, but completely bone dry. So this is a different painting that I did the other day, not on my live feed. But because I was doing this live, I needed to have a completely dry painting to do stage number 2. So that's what you see me doing here. After you let your paint completely dry, you can add a second layer. And so this is the second stage of painting, where we add maybe some feather details. We add in the eye. We add in the area between the beak. But again, not to be confusing, I'm painting on a different painting now because I needed to let my painting dry, and I was doing this live on my Facebook group. And so I did paint the shadow, but the shadow is painted the same way. I got the shadow wet, dropped in a lot of blue, then dropped in some red and some orange and let it all kind of merge and blend together, painting around the feet. All right, and I'm going to be using these Pigma Micron pens as well to add details. You could use black paint or any other thin black pen you have. Okay, I'm going to do what I call the jewelry. Okay, every painting needs jewelry. But just like when you wear your jewelry, you don't want to put too much. You don't want to put too little. You want just the right amount. The jewelry in a painting is putting the small details. So notice I've moved to a smaller brush. This is a 0 round, or it might be a 1 or a 2. Doesn't matter. It's not rocket science. Just whatever small brush you have that will allow you to paint tiny little details like the eyes, the line in the mouth, the little shadows under the feet. That's what we're going to paint. And it doesn't matter what dark color you use. You could use black. You could use burnt sienna with a little ultramarine blue added. I'm going to use a dark blue, ultramarine blue with a red to make my dark. It's a dark purple. Doesn't matter what color, really, for beginner's sake. As you advance, it matters a little. You can make it glow more by making it more warm or more cool. That's kind of an intermediate thing to learn, is using warms versus cools to make your colors really dance. But if you're a super beginner, just worry about getting your values right. So mix a nice dark purple that's milk consistency and paint your tiny little details like the mouth, actually, it's the empty space between the top beak and the bottom beak. And we're going to paint the eye. And I'm going to zoom in so that y'all can see. So again, the colors that you use for these darks don't matter. You can use purple. You can use black. You can use dark green. The point is it needs to be a dark. I'm going to use purple. So I'm going to mix my purple from ultramarine blue and a red. Ultramarine blue is a nice dark blue, full strength. So to get a dark, you mix less water into your paint. So that's called cream consistency. I'm going to work with milk consistency because the more water you add to your paint, the more transparent it looks. And I do want this to have a transparent look. But in small little areas like the eye, it doesn't really matter. But this is milk consistency. And I paint around the eye glint if possible. Remember to blot your heel so that you have control for these little areas. And then I'm going to also paint with the same exact paint in my brush, a little shadow. There's usually a harsh shadow directly under whatever it is that's casting that shadow, so I'm going to paint that. And that really grounds my goose. I make some of my shadow a little thinner and some a little thicker to add interest. My shadow is dark purple because I used ultramarine blue. For medium values, use cobalt blue. For lighter values, mix with cerulean blue. That's just a little hack I have. You can use your blues to also control your values. Some paints are darker than others, no matter how thick you get them. Ultramarine blue is one of the darkest. So it's really good to use, and that's why I can't live without it, because I can get dark, medium, and light values with ultramarine blue. With cobalt blue, you can only get medium and light mixes. Cobalt blue will never make a dark mix. Cerulean blue will never make a medium or dark mix because it's so light. All right, now I'm getting what is the equivalent of Holbein Opera. This is a hot pink color, hot temperature, to add a little bit more detail. And I'm gonna blot, because I'm gonna do a small little area, blotting the heel, not the tip. If I wanted to lighten the paint in my brush, I'd blot the tip. Or if I wanted to use dry brush technique, I would blot the tip or the whole bristle, the whole shebang, as they say. The eyeliner in this goose is actually kind of red, so I'm using that as an artistic opportunity to add the jewelry and make it hot pink jewelry. So at the end of your painting process, you add a few little key details that I like to call jewelry. You don't want too much, you don't want too little, that really will finish your painting and pull it together. Now I'm mixing my hot pink with the cobalt blue for a really bright purple. It's a really pretty purple you can get from this mix. For small areas, remember, blot your heel. I'll just keep reminding you, you want to blot your heel. I'm adding a little bit more darker purple to the eyeliner to make the eye stand out. All right, more watery, tea consistency. Remember, tea consistency for lighter effects. Really watery. You can build up your values by doing a layer of tea consistency, letting it dry. Painting another layer, letting it dry. Painting another layer, letting it dry. And then it'll get darker and darker with each subsequent layer. And it looks a lot more delicate and beautiful to build up your values that way for this transparent style of painting. Something I'm learning myself. So this is the thing that you can do also with layers. You can build up values, the lights, mediums, and darks, but you can also build up the textures. Here I'm putting in some feather textures and painting just a hint of the feathers. I'm not painting every single feather for this loose painterly approach. You paint the idea of the thing, the impression of the thing, and then just some of it, not every single feather. If you paint every single feather, you will get a more tight, more realistic, but more tight, less dreamy style. So if you are going for a dreamy look, don't paint every single feather. Don't paint every single brick. Don't paint every single fur or hair or whatever it is you're painting, every single leaf. Paint a few, and the rest can be big impressionistic shapes like we painted the shadows in his body. So I'm painting just a few little lines that I see in the reference. I'm just picking my favorite ones. And then I'm leaving the rest up to the viewer's mind to fill in, which the viewer's mind will do. Here's a perfect example of needing to balance out your values in relation to each other. After the goose's eye dried, it was still too light in relation to the other values. It needed to be a little darker than all the other values, just a little bit. So after it dried, I saw it was still not quite dark enough. So I'm going to paint another layer of purple onto the eye after the eye is dried, just a little bit. So that's balancing your values in relation to each other to bring your painting out of the ugly stage. So that's what I just did. So at the final stages of your painting, and y'all, I can tell you, most people abandon my tutorials in the last session and don't watch this key information about how you've got to stick with your painting. Pull it out of the ugly stage. I give you all the tools you need to learn how to look at your painting, how to assess your painting for what does it need to pull it out of the ugly stage. I just did a free demonstration for my free members on my Patreon about this member sent me her painting in the middle of the ugly stage, and I did a video. I painted on it digitally in Photoshop to show her what she could do to pull it out of the ugly stage. And it really helped her, and it helped whoever a lot. I got a lot of feedback that it was helpful. So be sure to join my free Patreon to go watch that too. Here I'm using an Pigma archival pen. I'm testing. There's different widths and darknesses. So I'm just testing on my little scrap of paper I keep handy to see which one I want to use. I just want to really fine line. A lot of times putting in some line work for a line and wash style will really also pull your painting together. You don't want to overdo it. And you want to use kind of a loose scribbly style. In my opinion, I think that looks good to put a little bit of line work to pull everything together. And I really scribbled along his back there to add a little bit of detail. And some of my members are like, I don't like that. And others are like, I love that. So it's up to you as an artist to decide what style you like and how you want to finish your painting. But I'm just giving you the tools that you can use to pull your painting together at the end stage. But I would say stick with your painting, work through the ugly stage. That is another benefit of joining my Patreon for a year, because you can send me your paintings and I will give you an in-depth critique of how you can move forward with it or what you could do differently next time, whatever you want. So you get a lot of extra hand-holding when you join for a year. You can email me your paintings and I will help you move forward with them or critique them, whatever you need. All right, so here's my goose that is pretty much dry that I painted with you guys here. And I used a little bit of spatter, by the way, and you don't want to over spatter. Spatter is actually just another texture to add variety to the textures you use, and it breaks up space. You don't want to overuse spatter, just like jewelry, you don't want to overuse it. I used a little bit of spatter on my painting to break it up. And you see that swish across the neck of this one, this is the one that I didn't video. The way that I did that is I painted the goose and let the paint set up to about damp. And then I took a damp brush and swished it across his neck. And what that does is it attaches the goose into the painting. So it's not a cutout look. And I talk about that in my Rembrandt windmill principle, where you have dark on dark edges, dark on light edges, light on dark. It's a whole thing. It's a whole huge, crazy, amazing thing I learned from James Gurney. He has such a good YouTube channel, and he has amazing books. And I learned that Rembrandt windmill principle from him. I'm signing, by the way, with my archival pen. I packed a lot of information into this tutorial, so I do encourage you to watch it again, because like I said, there's so many principles of how to paint in this tutorial, and that's how I design all my tutorials, to give you the tools you need to paint what you want. My tutorials are not designed to you paint each brushstroke with me, like almost paint by numbers. I want to set you up to be more independent. So this is my butterfly that I am about to release in a couple days. It's a real-time start to finish tutorial of a postcard. And I use these same techniques that I taught you today of painting a layer, letting it dry. And then an amazing insight I had about painting the black. Notice how the wings, even in the black area, look transparent. They don't look like heavy, clunky, chalky black. So there's a really cool trick that I used that you're not going to want to miss. Even if you don't want to paint a butterfly, you can use this in any painting that has a black area and you want it to glow and be a transparent black instead of this heavy, clunky, chalky black that you see a lot. That will weigh your painting down if you're going for a beautiful watercolor transparent style. So it'll be worth it. I'll make it worth your while to join my Patreon, even if you just joined to watch that one butterfly tutorial. But I have so many good tutorials with so many amazing insights that I've had over the last 5 years. It has been almost shocking to me, even after painting 25 years, how I continue to learn things that excite me, new things that I never even thought of. And as I learn those insights, I'm always learning. I'm passing those on to you guys. And I take you on my journey of learning and growing as an artist who's been painting for 25 years and an artist who is now getting my work is, I've got my Women in Watercolor signature status. Pinch me now. I am so honored and thrilled, and I never thought I could do that. I just got a new painting of Hum Slice of Sun, my painting I painted in 2004. It got accepted into the American Watercolor Society online show. A huge honor. I will link that show in the comments if you guys remind me. Help me remember. And it's just from exactly what I'm advocating for you guys to do here is paint a little bit every day. And that's how I started as a hobby, just painting a little bit. And it turned into me getting my work accepted into these prestigious watercolor societies. I never thought I would get here. My paintings were so ugly when I started, y'all. Painting is a skill. Painters are not artsy corns. We are just skilled craftsmen who have learned the tricks. And if you learn the tricks, you can paint anything. It is a journey, but if you have a roadmap, you can get there. So come on I hope you will join me on my journey. I will give you the roadmap that which I would have had when I started out. I mean, even the principles in this video, I would have saved myself years of agony if I would have known them. So I hope this was helpful. And I hope you'll come join my Patreon for free so you stay in closer touch. You can post on your paintings, if you're a free member, in my chats section, patreon.com/RachelStudio/chats. You can post your paintings there. You can post your paintings on my free Facebook group, Rachel's Watercolor Workshop. So join me at least in the free areas, and I hope to entice you to join my paid tutorials too, because that is how I actually earn my living. That's how I make this watercolor free YouTube channel possible. This YouTube channel it would not be possible if it wasn't for my Patreon. I couldn't do this. I only make $300 a month from my ads. Etsy is deluge with artificial intelligence. I'm not selling prints and originals like I used to. Everything's changed, and thank goodness for Patreon. It is my main income now, and I appreciate those of you who do come support me there. You're supporting a living artist, and if you get something out of the work that I put into these videos take a lot of work, and I am not an artsy corn that can live on rainbows. So I do depend on the financial income I get from Patreon. So thank you to those of you who support me in that way. But thank you to all of you who leave comments, watch my videos, binge my videos. Binging my videos tells the YouTube algorithm more than anything that you love me and I'm worth sharing to the world. So thank you for binging my videos, going and watching those videos in my playlist. leaving comments and supporting me and giving me all the encouragement you do. I really appreciate it. And join me for my next free video because one will be coming soon. So subscribe so you don't miss it. And until next time, go watercolor your world. Bye, everybody.